Hi, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I want to talk about 6 things that you can do if you're looking to pivot, but you're not yet ready. And this is especially for you if you're in mid-career. Oftentimes I get people saying to me, I know that I don't want to stay in my job for, the next year or the next 2 years. But I'm not ready to move at the moment. But then they're not changing anything about how they're operating on a day-to-day basis, and they're not getting ready for when the time is right for them to move. And the reality is that we often think that the decision to move will be ours. When we're good and ready, then we'll move. As you can see from layoffs happening, from just the world evolving at a crazy pace with technology and artificial intelligence, is that sometimes that decision is taken from you. So my advice whenever I'm speaking to people is you've always got to be ready. You've always got to have something else in your arsenal so that, if something unexpectedly happens or when you're good and ready, you already have things working for you before it's time to pivot. So let's go through the list. Number one, you've got to put time aside to work on your pivot. When you see people that have successfully pivoted, majority of them didn't just decide it on a Monday and then pivot on a Friday. Majority of them have been working towards it for 3, 6 months, possibly a year or two. But the reality is that we often think that you'll be able to do everything you want to do for the pivot in a few weeks or a month or two. For most people, it takes a considerable amount of time. And so I listen to Rachel Rogers, who is a business coach. And if you're serious about transitioning, for example, from your corporate job to entrepreneurship, the first thing she asks you to do is to find 20 hours in your schedule each week where you're going to specifically work on your business. Now, if you're looking to transition into another job, perhaps you don't necessarily need 20 hours, but I would say you need at least 5 hours, 5 to 10 hours. And these are times that you specifically scheduled and built your life around. So these aren't negotiable times. So, for example, if you would normally, I don't know, take your kid to school, maybe your partner can take your kid to school for the months when you're working on this, or for 1 or 2 days if you need that extra time to be able to work on your pivot. So, this is you kind of forensically going through your calendar and identifying where there are opportunities for you to delegate or defer some of the stuff that you'd normally do to be able to make time for your pivot. We can go on to talk about what you do in that time in a later video, but you've got to make time to actually work on your pivot if you want your pivot to be successful and if you don't want to take a step backwards in making that pivot. The second thing I'll say that you need to do while you're getting ready for this pivot is to make a financial plan. This is a really important bit, and it's often the unspoken thing when people are staying in jobs that they've long outgrown. People kind of stay on because they just don't want to take the financial hit that they assume a pivot will entail. And the thing I say to people is the obvious things, you've got to work out what your outgoings are, you've got to work out what your ingoings are, and you've got to look at how to optimize both. So I'm not an advocate for saying stop having coffees if your Starbucks coffee is something that gives you a lot of joy. By all means, you need to do it because this is a marathon, not a sprint. But I will say look for opportunities where you can optimize things. If there's subscriptions that you're not using, that's your opportunity to really kind of, stop all of them. And then, you need to kind of work out the transition period. And if you think it's going to take you 3 months to transition, for example, if you're moving from a corporate job to entrepreneurship, I would budget for 6 to 9 months. If you think it's going to take you 6 months, I would budget for like 12 months. Um, Typically to get into a comfortable place, it takes a bit longer than people anticipate. So just give yourself a buffer so that you're not freaked out and then you rush back into getting a job you hate when a bit of foresight and additional planning could have meant that you had sufficient buffer to basically, withstand the nervousness you feel if the business hasn't turned around the revenue you anticipated as quickly as you were hoping for. So I would say have a solid financial plan. If possible, I would actually even have a separate account where you just put, the money that you're saving towards your transition in. And then the thing I'd say is that if you find yourself in a position where you're thinking, you know what, I don't really have much disposable income to be able to put any aside, and it's going to take me ages to be able to get to the sums that I'm looking for, then that's your cue to do a number of things. I've spoken to people where the conversation has been, well, you got to negotiate your salary, you got to get your salary up at your current employer, or you might want to look for a bridge role, a role that you know that it isn't necessarily something that you want for the long term, but making the move will give you a significant advantage in one way, shape, or form. And in this case, it might be that the move is, focused on significantly increasing your salary. Or you might want to get a side gig. Maybe, you have a really good skill set or a hobby that can turn around revenue. A lot of people use social media as that second source of income. So whatever you need to do to increase your income, you've got to do it in the interim period, right? And actually that might be an opportunity to experiment on the business that you're looking to do full time when you pivot out of your 9 to 5. So this gives you an opportunity to be able to kind of trial it out before you finally make the move. But you need a financial plan. You need to put time in your calendar when you're specifically working on your pivot, whether that's for a new job or for entrepreneurship. The other thing I'd say you need to do while you're getting ready for a pivot is you need to invest in developing yourself. So I encourage people to do an audit of the skill sets they have, the capabilities they have. If you have a brag bag, which is where you put in all the positive bits of feedback you get throughout time, you can review that and see where there are themes in how people describe, you and the quality of work that you do and the value that you bring to the teams that you're part of. So I would do an audit of all of the skill sets that you have, and then I'd look at what it is you want to do next. So maybe you want to go for a more senior role, in your next move. I would then try and identify some of the skill sets that are sought for that role. So you might do this through looking at job descriptions or again through the feedback that you've received. And once you've identified the sort of skills gaps, I would really strategically kind of focus on evolving that. So if for example the feedback is around your communication style, I would read books, podcasts, watch videos, maybe go on courses on trying to improve your communication skills. So use the time that you have while you're not yet ready for a pivot. Use that time to evolve your skill set, and it'll have a material impact on how you navigate your pivot. Because, for example, using the example of your communication skills, if you've now invested time in evolving your communication skills, it means that if you're going into interview, you feel that more confident, you have a little pep in your step because, you have this additional tool in your arsenal to be able to kind of use to try to secure your new opportunity. So use your time well. The other thing I would say, the fourth thing is people don't often do this, is to maximize the opportunities that you have in your current role. So, I've seen people in companies where, for example, you have a learning budget, use it. You have some vacation time, take your vacation time and enjoy yourself, take time off, but also invest in, the future pivot that you want to do. It might be that you have the opportunity to get promoted, to work on different types of projects that will increase your visibility or increase your salary or give you the additional skill sets that you need to be able to have a successful pivot later on. So actually sit down and don't just focus on the fact that you want to leave your job or leave the company, but think to yourself, while I'm here for the next, month or 3 months or 6 months, however long, what are the opportunities that this company affords me that I can leverage, for my advantage, in order to kind of have a successful move when the time is right. And then the last thing I would say is to reconnect with your network. This is the thing that I think very few people get right. You want to be connecting with people when you don't need anything from them. And in actual fact, if you're in a position where you're able to add value to them without necessarily expecting anything back, that is the best possible situation to be in. So, you might want to go for coffee with your ex-colleague. Maybe you've seen an article that resonates with the conversation you were having with your neighbor. You forward it to them, etc. So look for opportunities. I would say maybe be reaching out to 3 to 5 people in your network each week, whatever the number is arbitrary. But the point is, you're really warming up your network. Now, this is strategic, right? Don't be cynical about this because some people might say, oh, you're just reaching out to those people because you know that in a year's time you're going to go back to them and ask for them. Yes, and in sort of warming up your network, be look for opportunities to add value to people, right? If you can. So if you can make connections, if you can refer people to your existing organization, do it. What you're also doing in warming up your network is you're putting yourself at the forefront of people's minds. Let's face it, if your ex-colleagues have moved on to their new company, they're typically not thinking about you, right? They're trying to make a mark on the new company. So the fact that you've taken your time to reach out, to check in on how they're doing, to have a coffee, to laugh about some of the things that you both experienced when they were still in your company, that goes a long way. So if you imagine that example, the person is now in this new company, and then the HR person says, "Oh, we're looking for someone else to join the team, and this is the employee referral bonus that we offer people." It's a win-win situation. So don't think that the only time you engage with people is when you're actively in the market and looking for a job. In that sort of interim period where you know mentally that you're going to be leaving your company and leaving your job, but you haven't yet made the move, take the steps to ensure that you prepare things for when you're good and ready to make the transition. So I hope that's been helpful. What did I miss, right? Put your comments in put down your comments. Let's kind of see what are the tips you have. And I appreciate you staying with me on this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. And if you haven't already, do like and subscribe. Thanks.